and I'm the Chief Operating Officer, Executive Officer at LaChance Consulting. And today's class and workshop will be about writing your resume. And it really is an art. So the art of professional profiling. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to raise your hands. And you can also add those questions in the chat box. And at the end, we're actually going to have some time dedicated to questions. Okay, so feel free, to chime in when you have questions. So, writing to win, right? So that's the whole goal for your resume, right? You're writing that resume so that you can win, that you can be that next employee, that you can be hired. And so you guys did a great job by writing to win, since you were all part of this summer program, okay? So at least we know for the basics that you're able to do a resume. But we're going to help you perfect that resume. So today, the outline, there are different types of resumes, and we're going to go through those today. We're going to go into what information goes into a good resume, the do's and don'ts, best practices. We'll have some templates from Adobe, and we'll have a Microsoft Word template for you to see. We'll give some final recommendations, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So types of resumes. So we have what's called a chronological resume. And this resume is basically, as it states, in the order of your experiences. So chronologically, you list your experiences and the companies that you've worked for. Also, there's a functional resume. And so, when you're more experienced in your field, in your profession, maybe you're a principal, your, resume will probably be a functional style resume. And most resumes are a combination of the two, right? So, what information goes into a good resume? It's not just about communication, but it's about impact. Now, everyone wants to be the next employee at Google, Microsoft, Zoom, right? Or any big IT company, or it's as some people mentioned earlier that they were doing Zoom yoga classes. So you want to be the next, guru at, big yoga company, right? So you want to showcase your excellent skills. And so it's not just about communicating that, but communicating it with an impact, right? So one of the examples I like to use is, for many job opportunities, we do, data entry, maybe workshops, research, counseling, working with youth in different capacities, being their emotional support, their advisors, right? And you don't want to just write that on your resume. You want it to make an impact, right? So how did that assignment that you did really make a difference in the company that you're working for? So you want to, talk about how, putting in the data in an organized manner where, it upped the sales for your company, or made it easy for clients or customers to be able to utilize the services, or offered by your organization or your company. So providing that information in a real authentic way, a way that really sells you. Now, a good resume has the following: contact information, your objective, career highlights or qualifications, summary, experience, education, honors or citations, publications, if any. And I'm sure some of you are great writers. So if you are a writer, any publications that you have, you want to include that. Membership and professional organizations. And then at the end of every resume should have references available upon request. So your contact information, it should include your full name, your complete address, your phone number, and your email address. Sometimes, as an employer, I've received, resumes where I've made a call and the number is not in service, right? And then, after reaching out by email, alerting, that potential candidate that their phone number isn't working, realize that, oh, that was my old phone number. But it's really important to have current contact information on your resume, because not a lot of employers are willing to take the second step of reaching out to you, via phone or via email if one of those, information is incorrect. So I always say, just look at it again. If you've used that resume for the last 2 years, update it. Okay, just go to that contact information. It's right at the top. Make sure it's current. Now, the objective part of your resume, it states your career goals. It can be as simple as stating your desired job title, or it can show where you have been and where you hope to go in your career. Some people say it is no longer necessary. Strategically, I would say think whether or not it meets your style and your format. Either way, it's not the main decision-making benchmark for your resume. So if you do not have it in your resume, it does not, lower your chances of, getting employment at that particular organization. Or if you do have it, it does not increase your chances in any way, right? But if you do have it, make sure that it states, what you're desiring, your title. So sometimes, folks try to keep that objective pretty global or universal. Like, I want to support humanity in a positive way. Right? I mean, it's a good aspiration, right? But if you're looking for a particular opportunity, you want to be specific, right? Let the employer know, what it is that you want to do. Does anyone want to take a try at giving us an objective, maybe one that you have in your current resume that you'd like to share? Well, that's okay. I was just seeing if there were any brave virtual. We do have okay.
Well, I don't know if I have a tip, but I can show my resume.
Well, because of time,
again?
if you can read it off for us, that would be helpful.
So
What's your
on my resume actually has my full address, as you stated.
Mm-hmm.
It also has oh, sorry, I'm just trying to open it right now. So it has my address, my full address, my LinkedIn. It also has my email. It has my awards and sample coursework. and then it goes into professional experience, and then it goes into leadership and volunteer experience, then
Yeah.
skills, interests, and workshops.
And we're going to go over that today. But did you have an objective in your resume, or you didn't?
No, I'm
And
sorry.
and that's what I was saying. So it's not like it's mandatory or important. Um, as I said, some people say it's no longer necessary, right? But if you did have one, was giving you the opportunity to share it. So I want to give someone else. Does someone want to share their objective if they had one?
I can share mine. It's a little
Sure.
older, and I stopped including it.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm in the yoga industry.
Yeah.
And it's a couple of sentences.
Mhm.
It's Chrissy strives to inspire her students to be the best version of themselves. In 2014, she founded a yoga events company that brings people together in non-traditional spaces to practice yoga, connect, and thrive. Today, she empowers her students through her playful and upbeat classes that include a variety of styles, such as, and I list the styles.
Okay, that's awesome, right? One thing and word of advice with that objective is it should be a little bit more brief.
Yeah.
But it's really tells the story of your innovativeness, your the type of person you are. You created a company, so that's like a something that an organization that's doing yoga or agency that's looking for an yoga instructor would see that you have that drive and that commitment. So that would be something that would sell to your resume. So
Hey, John, in the chat there's some burning questions. I think that will answer a lot of people's questions. So
sure.
I have been asking, is the objective similar to what you will write in the cover letter, or hold on, would it be something like a summary of qualifications?
Yeah, so it's not really a summary of qualifications, but it really is a I would say a unique way of saying who you are and how the career that you're applying for supports that, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question? If you could put yes in the chat, that would help. If not, we can clarify it a little bit more. Did we get a response?
Yeah, they said yes a little bit, but I would like some examples.
Okay. So for example, we're applying to Fresh Air Fund for a counseling position, right, as a camp counselor for the summer. So I would say in my objective, I'm super talented at giving advice to teenagers 14 to 18 and looking for an opportunity at an organization that will support my interest in this area. Right? So that's basically, cut dry my objective. That's what I want. That's what I'm looking for. All right. And it could be based on whatever area of interest that you have. All right. Keep those questions coming. All right. So let's continue. So career highlights or qualifications. That is important to include in your resume because that's your career profile, right? So in that section, you want to include any key achievements that you have, your strongest skills and traits, and any relevant experience that you have. All right? We want to know what your career is all about and your qualifications for those career objectives. Now, here is an example of how you would put in your last occupations, right? And one of the things, if you notice, is the titles are bolded, right? when your titles are bolded, it just pops on your resume, right? So in your resume, you want to pop out those titles because that's basically, you know, an official job title that you've carried, right, at your organization. You also want to include the company's name, the location, and the time that you've worked at that company for, right? So many of your maybe camp counselors, we have yoga instructors, village leaders, project managers, or some are interns. Whatever opportunity it is, you want to capture that in this section of your resume. Any questions about that? Okay.
So they wrote, what if you don't have experience for what you're applying for?
Okay, that's a good point, right? When I first started looking for a job, that was one of my things because I did lots of volunteer experience, and we're going to go into that a little bit later. But you should list every volunteer experience that you have because they are work experience, right? You know, if you volunteered, you've worked, right? And so sometimes that volunteer could be 3 months, you know, in the summer, you know, or it could be a year, right? Whatever whatever volunteer experience that you have, you know, if you're working at your church, you're working at a food bank, you're working, you know, for your after school program, you know, just volunteering your time, even if you're not being paid for it, um, it's a skill. So you want to include that, right? So don't ever think that you don't have any experience. You know, working with parents and grandparents can be some of the best experiences that you can have, right? I remember when, you know, my mom started, you know, getting, looking for help using a computer. I mean, that's technical assistance, right? You're helping somebody learn how to, you know, navigate to a website or use social media, right? Those are skills, right? So I would say be creative in the way that you articulate those job experiences, okay? So, but no one has no experience, okay? Education. So, you know, you want to include your high school and above, right? When you've more seasoned in your career, you have a master's, you may just want to include your BA and your MA, right? Space on your resume, you know, if you have lots of space, you know, areas in your resume, you might want to include all of them, right? So again, it's really putting that profile, overall profile of your resume together and including these pieces. Any questions regarding education? Right? If you know, did a associate degree, you want to include that too, right? Because sometimes people do an associate before they do their BA, right? So you want to include that. Honors, awards, citations, or publications. You must include academic, community, and professional honors, awards, citations, or publications. And sometimes you run into the question of, if I have always gotten lots of honors and lots of awards and citations and publications, maybe focus on the ones that are more high level, right? But include everything. So if you've, you know, have, you know, you don't have a lot of publications, but you have a lot of awards, include that. If you have honors, you know, you're on the honor roll for your, you know, your college, and, you know, for, you know, the last 5 years, include that, right? That shows an employer your, you know, your excellence, right? For me, when I worked at the mayor's office, I received the Mayor's Excellence in Customer Service Award, right? So that's something that I include on my resume, right? If I get, more presidential awards, then, they may replace the mayoral awards, right? And of course, it depends on the space that you have, right? So as you grow, some of the awards and citations and publications will kind of go off for the bigger awards and citations, right? But you can also list them, in a, you don't have to list them individually, right? You can also group it. Membership and professional organizations. So if you are a part of any membership organization, professional organizations at your colleges or outside of your colleges, if you belong to any of those, you want to include it on your resume, right? It shows education to learning and keeping current in your career. So Christy, you might have some, new yoga certifications that you may receive, right? Anyone else has any membership professional organizations that they would like to mention that they're a part of?
One says Basta Fellow.
Sorry, say that again.
It says Basta Fellow. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right.
Basta Fellow. Yes. So you want to include that.
Was Association of Fundraising Professionals.
Yeah, that's like now with the pandemic and nonprofits, looking for resources, that is like a highlight on your resume, right? Because everyone is looking for funding now, right? All nonprofits are really trying to, get that build up for their organization so that they can support them going forward. I was reading this morning that, some statistics on organizations that are nonprofits that are probably going to close, because of COVID, right? And the pandemic. So, by seeing that on your resume as a young upcoming leader, an organization will employ you because that's an employable skill. Any other associations that are mentioned? Anyone wants to mention any?
Some said the New York State Society of CPA, Teaching Opportunity Corps, Legal Outreach. That's what's there so far.
Yeah, and if you're not in any membership or professional organizations at the moment, start thinking about it, right? What interests you? What area are you most, familiar with that's, that you can find an association or a membership organization to follow? If you're on LinkedIn, that's a really great place to find lots of membership and professional organizations, right? So, one of the membership and professional organizations that I just recently started on LinkedIn was for my consulting company, right? So, those organizations and professional associations, they're available. There's so many. Pick which ones that interest you. All right. And then you can include that on your resume. So if you don't have any of those at the moment, start doing your research. All right.
LaShawn, someone asked, can we add a club that we are part of in college?
Absolutely. Yes. That's the place that you would add it, right? So if you're on the African Puerto Rican club, or you're on, the accounting club, or, the Senate group at your college, that they have a club, you're on the help me somebody. You're in any of those clubs, that exist, right?
Even sports?
Sports clubs, yeah, include those. I remember hearing from one organization that they had, a pile full of resumes, and they ended up going selecting a person because of their club affiliations, right? They were on this junior tennis club at, you know, a school that they went to, and that became like the hire, you know, like other things are in the resume, but that became the one thing that was so unique about that person, you know, that they were memorable in terms of the hiring practice. So include those club and you know, interest activities there. And then at the end, you want to have the references that are available upon request, right? Employers who are interested in you will ask you for your references either at the interview or a follow-up call or by email. It should be on a separate paper and not a part of your resume. You know, sometimes people want to put at the end references and actually list people and phone numbers. It's not a best practice to include that on your resume. It should be on a separate sheet, and you can list your, you know, top 3 or 5 referrals. Okay? Any questions on that?
Going back to sorry, the information based on honors and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So one was asking about, like, if you graduated college a few years ago, would you remove the information from your resume?
No, not necessarily. You can keep information, right? Honors. If you had a GPA of, you know, you were on the honor roll, you graduate cum laude in your class, you can keep that on your resume for a lifetime, right? Not because you're graduated college means that you take, you know, valuable information off your resume, right? I was only alerting to the fact that maybe if you have a lot of you know, honors that you've acquired over the years, you know, then you can, you know, maybe take some off and include others. But if you have the space, you want to include all of that, you're welcome to. All right. And later in the presentation, I'll show you an example of how I did that. Right.
Well, and LaShawn, quick question. I think we were wondering too, like, how long after you graduate college, like when you take your high school off?
Well, I mean, some people keep it on, right? You know, it depends on your level of work experience. So if you worked at one organization for a lot of time and you're, you know, now going back out to, you know, looking for another opportunity, you might need fillers on your page in your resume to space it out. So you might include your high school, right? I know for government, they like to see high school diplomas and copies of it when you start in government, and they eventually go with you. But, you know, you don't have to include it if you don't want to. I say it's up to you, right? How important is it for you to keep that high school diploma on your resume? You know, if you graduated from, you know, a prevalent high school, you know, that's well known, you know, and you have to have like the highest credentials to get into that high school, you know, you might include it, right? So if it's important to you, keep it. If it's not important to you, you know, you can kind of take it off. All right. But there's no, you know, in terms of including high school, you know, your BAs and your MAs, there's no rule of thumb, right? There may be preferences and best practices, but I say, you know, whatever makes you happy on that resume, right? That an employer will not frown upon, right? And an employer is not going to frown upon you putting your high school. Okay. All right, this is like my favorite section. And these, you know, do's and don'ts, there's so many more of them, you know, because, you know, like a teacher, parent, you know, you're like, just don't do this, do that. Don't do this, do that, right? There's lots of do's and don'ts, but these are 7 do's and 7 don'ts that I'm really comfortable sharing. And I think these are like high level things that, you know, as an employer, if you're, you know, see the do's, like those are important to me, right? And the ones that are on the don't side, those are like really important to me. So do's. Number 1. Can I have a reader to read number 1? A volunteer?
Make sure your most recent job experiences have enough detail.
Thank you, Nikayla.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
it is important that your most recent experience, because that's what people are looking for, you know, as an employer for your resume. What have you just done? All right, that sells it to us, right? And so, you know, for you know, the team here today, you've all been doing virtual classes and virtual events with you know, students in this program. Detail those things, right? You know, Chrissy's been doing the virtual yoga. Lots of companies are looking for that now, right? Because, you know, we're not meeting in spaces. I believe the the gyms and like the yoga studios are like 50% now, right? So they don't have the capacity to do this in-house because of social distancing. So if you're doing this virtually, that's a thumbs up, right? That's a seller, right? That's a keeper. That's the person who I'm looking for, you know, in hiring for my resume. All right. Can I get another volunteer or
That's the question towards the first do.
yeah, the second do? Who would like to read the second do?
No, I have a question on the first
Oh,
do.
sure.
I have an understanding that you have to sort of tweak your experience depending on the job you are applying for. Does your most recent if your most recent experience has nothing to do with the job you're applying for, would it still be relevant for that job?
What I like to say is every experience has relevance to where you're going, right? Every experience you have adds value to the work that you do. If you worked, you know, and you know, pardon me for this example, you know, at McDonald's, right? If you worked there for, you know, the summer, you know, working with you know, the staff doing as a cashier, right? Or at the bank as a teller, right? Those experiences are important and they shape and make who you are, right? Because now you have all this customer service experience that it doesn't matter what space you go into, it's valuable, right? You know, we have you know, this yoga, I keep pulling up Chrissy because she's, you know, this yoga example, right? Even if Chrissy is looking for an opportunity working at a Fortune 500 company, right? Her experience, you know, doing virtual yoga classes for, you know, students, you know, ages, you know, 12 to 18 and doing it virtually, that's valuable to me, right? As an employer, right? Someone who's working a security job, right? It may not be relevant to their, you know, the opportunity that they're applying to at, you know, a health and wellness clinic, right? But you want to use the experiences that you have related to that job that relates to the job that you're doing. If that makes sense. Does that help?
Yes, it does.
Right. So don't ever think that an experience that you have doesn't apply to your next job, because every experience you have is a stepping stone to your next job. All right. So always see it that way. Ensure that your voicemail and your email addresses are employer appropriate. All right. So, when you call and the employer gets your voice message, it's not, "Hey, what's up? Call me back. Busy," or, loud music in the background, or, an inappropriate email like "sexy queen, queen rocks," have your email appropriate, right? So your name, um, you know, uh, something that represents you as a professional. All right. Use a format and font size that is clearly legible, right? Times New Roman, Korean New, like Arial, any font that is, we're not confused with an A and a B, right? Like the letters are clear, right? Sometimes you want to be fun and funky and, interesting and that, but if it's not clear to the employer what letter is what letter, then, I would say, please don't use those fonts. Use action verbs when writing about job responsibilities, right? Created, organized, directed. Those tell in terms of your responsibility, right? Organize duties and topics by bullet points within a position description, right? So bullet points are really nice because it just clearly articulates, the duties that you've done, and a real clear and easy format for the viewer. So, while, writers like to do paragraphs, it's not a good resume practice. Okay. So bullets are really, really helpful for that. And as I said before, include all the volunteer experience that you have. Go ahead.
So sorry. So there was a question about the bullet points. So then it was saying, is it important to have 2 or 3 experiences with multiple bullet point, or for duties, or to have experiences listed 1 point?
You can have a 1-point bullet point, right? And I'm going to show you that in an example later. But you want to have bullet points, right? It usually is better to have 2 or 3 or 4, but you can have 1 bullet, right? I do this, I did that, right? And it covered very broadly the things that you've done. Do you have any?
Yeah, and how does how can all the information fit in just 1 page?
Well, you have to be creative, right? And you have to also eliminate information that's not necessary. That's the important thing, right? You being a good knitter, right? I love knitting, right? Is not important part of your resume, right? Even though I love it, it's really burning and it's a part of me, right? That's something that I leave out, right? So there's certain things that are burning that are part of us that we can actually just leave out of our resume. I hope that answers your question. Any other questions?
I mean, related to that same question.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're hired for a specific position, but throughout your experience in the workspace, they make you do extra stuff. How do you fit that into 3, 4 bullet points? Because sometimes, like I know what I'm working right now. I do more than my qualifications are, and how do I fit that into 3, 4 points?
So what you can do is, one is you can put them in categories, right? So like 3 big categories. So, instead of listing out every customer service thing that you've done, you can use the category of customer service. And then you can, for students, campers, and staff, right? So see, I just grouped it all together in this one bullet, right? And then, let's say, for instance, and it's not easy, right? It's a craft. It's a technique of doing it, right? But it can be done, right? It's just a matter of you thinking about it instead of detailing it, if that helps.
Yes.
Right? And sometimes you can group two different tasks together, right? So, an example might be that you wrote you wrote in the journals, you wrote in the newsletter, and you wrote on the website, right? So instead of putting those three things as three separate bullets, you put it as one, right? You wrote in journal, websites, and and so there's ways to group the things that you do in a creative but functional way. All right, now we're going to the fun parts. Don'ts, right? So don't leave off dates of employment or locations, right? I know we were talking about when your resume becomes long and there's so many things to do, but it's not a good practice, because you didn't like the barbershop job that you were doing. You were a barber and you're doing people's hair from 2011 to 2012, and you just eliminate that straight off your resume. And then you start your next job, right? Because what employers are looking at now is, what did you do from that time period? Nothing. Were you unemployed? Were you, so it's important not to leave off dates of employments and locations, because it lets the employer think there is a gap, there's something missing, right? And as an employer and HR people on the employment team are really looking at these things. So, they automatically observe it because they've been doing it. This is kind of in their, it's like in their DNA. So as soon as they see that 3-year gap, it's like a red flag. Right? So you don't want to have any red flags on your resume. Anyone have any questions about that? And then number 2, cramming the page with information. We know everybody has lots and lots of work experience, but we don't want to feel like that when we're reviewing the resume, right? So don't cram your resume with too much information. Don't include tables, charts, pictures of yourself or graphic art on your resume. I know some people like to put their profile photos on their resume. It's, it can be looked frowned upon. And then there's also, when you do that, you're actually, if, an employer doesn't really like women, or they don't like people of color, or they don't like this type of person, they're looking at your image and automatically they're, insinuating things about you without really knowing you, right? So I would say don't use any, graphic art or pictures of yourself, no charts, no tables, that's not the space for it, right? You can have those as like attachments, because I know sometimes, graphic artists and, statisticians, like tables and charts and stuff, they're really great at doing those things, and they want to show the employer that they have expertise in those areas. But do that as like attachments, not in the actual resume. Don't state your salary requirement. right? We all have our salary requirement in our mind, right? We want this salary. We want to get paid for what we're doing and all, you know, our work experience. But don't include it in your resume, okay? Don't include personal hobbies that are not relevant. So my example earlier with knitting, you know, I love it. I'm passionate about it, but I don't include that in my resume, right? Include objective statements that are broad or non-specific to the job at hand. You know, the example I gave earlier that you're planning to save the world and be, you know, a good humanitarian as your objective, you know, that's not specific to the opportunity that you're applying to. So that's a don't. All right. And don't lie on your resume, right? Employers will eventually find out that, you know, you're not the SPSS genius whiz, or, you know, the GIS graphic specialist, or you're not the expert at Zoom meetings, right? So if you were always, you know, the support of the Zoom meetings, but you never actually were the driver of it, then, you know, by saying that you're, you know, you're excellent at Zoom meetings and you've excelled in this, it's not going to help you, right? You don't want to have a foot in the door and then a foot outside the door right after, right? So it's better to be honest, to say that, you know, this is a skill that I don't have, but I'm planning to develop. And, you know, employers will understand that. It may not be a match for them because they may be looking for someone who's an expert in that area, but at least you're not setting up yourself for failure. Okay? Okay, best practice templates for resumes. So Adobe InDesign has some built-in programs for doing your resume professionally. Also, Microsoft Word has some templates, and, you know, you can, you know, start with that for, you know, the organizational part of your resume. Has anyone used Adobe InDesign before?
I have.
Do you like it?
It's okay. I think at first it was a bit complicated, but after a while I got the hang of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's all new systems, right? When you start, it's a challenge, but once you kind of start using it, it becomes easier. But it's a really good tool for, you know, stylistically for, you know, the design elements of a resume. In the chat, anyone has used InDesign, Adobe Word? Now, everyone has used Word, right, for their resume and templates. Okay. All right, so this is an example of an Adobe InDesign resume, okay? And as you can see here, it has the person's name, their information, their education, their skills, leadership, and experience. For kind of junior folks, you know, you could list your education first, but for more experienced staff and you know, when you're more at the management level, it's really a best practice to have your experience second. All right. I mean, sorry, your experience first, and then have your education second. All right, so here is a example of my resume here. So if I'm able to get over 10 years experience in a resume like this, and it looks nice and clean, then Michael, you are able to get your summer experiences in max of 4 bullets, right? Of the things that you've done for the summer. All right, anybody wants to read off my objective?
I'll do it. Is the first paragraph on top, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But see, I didn't label it objective, right?
Yeah.
Because I want it to be unique, impactful, but just showing you that you can keep an objective in a resume and it be relevant, right?
Yes. It says visionary, challenge-driven, successful leader with over 10 years of experience in academic and government, with a concentration in economic development, community planning. Innovative-minded professional with excellent written and verbal communication skills and the ability to problem solve. Prioritize, manage time, and engage in multiple tasks in a fast-paced environment.
How does that sound, Christy?
Sound very qualified.
Yeah. Megan,
Sounds
how does
really,
that sound?
yeah, impactful.
Anyone else would like to thoughts on that? All right. So after this this workshop, I expect all of you to, you know, if you want to have an objective, be able to, you know, articulate it in this way. All right. It doesn't have to be the same words, right? But in the same way. And I'll share the PowerPoint presentation with all of you, so you have it for your reference, and then I will also share the recording so that you can go back to it. All right, so if you note, sorry, let me go back. If you notice from my professional experience, right, how many opportunities do you see listed there?
Four.
Well, it looks like 4, right?
Yeah, I mean, the ones that are like darker, those are like the main ones. But under that, there's more.
Right. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4 main experience, and then there are 3 additional experience. But you see how they're all listed? But the way that I set it up is a way that I can hold all my years of experience. So, you know, a potential employer can see that I've been working since 2002, right? To, you know, 2020, right? And it's in a way that it's looks good, right? It's clean, right? And then you see that example with that one bullet with the LaShawn's cupcakes, right? I just put it all in one shot, right? Now, when you look at that, Michael, do you think that I do a lot in that one bullet?
It's really concise, and I feel like there's a lot on it also.
It's a lot, right? But it's so that's how you guys have to do your resumes, right? It's got to be a lot. People have to see that there's a lot of rich work in you, but in a manageable way, right? Not overwhelming, right? All right, so final tips. All right, focus on relevance. Resumes need to be catered to the criteria of the application, right? Keep to the point. Resumes that are focused and catered to the job are ahead of the game. Social media and connecting to HR. So 92% of employers will recruit using social media platforms. Recruiting departments will use LinkedIn 93% of the time, Twitter 54% of the time, and Facebook 66% of the time. Connecting with the HR manager or the hiring manager after applying online will get you much farther than a passive application. So those are tips to do, right? So don't just put in your application. You know, also respond to the hiring manager. all right, with an email. That's how one of my staff members was employed, right? They didn't just apply, they also reached out. Now, the Brooklyn Public Library, they offer a career help and resume. And if you email your email at resumehelp@brooklynlibrary.org, you can actually send them your resume and they will review it and offer you feedback. And they also have a video consultation opportunity, so you can schedule that. And they'll send you the Zoom link, and you can, get someone who's an expert in looking at resumes to, take a quick look at your resume. I think we've covered questions and answers, but are there any last minute questions that anyone has?
From Megan, do you have to be a New York resident for that?
I think so, because you have to use your library card. Or if you know someone in, the city who will share their credentials with you so that you can get the information and support.
I got you, Megan.
She got you. He got you, Megan. Michael's got you. Any other questions? All right. So this is our social media arm. Go ahead.
Sorry, it says, do you suggest using color or just black and white?
I would say black and white. Yeah. A resume, it's just more professional. But some designers are good at using color and making things work. So I don't like to say no. I would say it has to be tastefully professional. So this is our Facebook, our Instagram, and our Twitter handles. You're all welcome to following us. We do offer tips for nonprofits and businesses, and we have a blog that we do. So if you want to continue receiving information about us, feel free to follow us on our social channels. And I'd like to thank you all for being a part of this great presentation today. And one of the things I'd like to do is maybe get a photo shot of the group. So if you